My name is Sean, aka Watery Aquarius, and you're listening to the Hacking Astrology podcast. Here I teach you how to hack your astrology charts to help you deconstruct the toxic concepts that come along with learning astrology and teach you how to have a healthier relationship with astrology. Let's escape toxic astrology together. Hello, raindrops. Welcome to part 2 of episode 1 for toxic astrology. Last week, we went over just general toxic concepts that are present in astrology, and I gave you kind of a rundown of what exists out there and how I deal with it in a quick way. And on this podcast, we're going to be diving deeper into that. And we're going to do that by interviewing Pisces, who is an astrology TikToker who has over 100K followers. And he's taught me a lot. He's a huge staple in the TikTok world, in the astrology TikTok world. My cat's here. And he has a lot of great perspectives on astrology, and I think has a very balanced relationship with astrology. And he actually doesn't call himself an astrologer as well, which we'll get into. Oh God, you need to get down here. So yeah, we're gonna do an interview where we have a conversation about toxic astrology, and we want to give you our perspectives on how we deal with toxic astrology. How do we use astrology in a healthy way? And we'll be talking about capitalism. We'll be talking about gender. We'll be talking about responsibility of creators on TikTok, and we'll be able to see his takes. So stay tuned because the interview is coming up next. Before we get into that, I lit my birthday candles. So if you want a birthday candle, 10% off. Code SeanP10, link in the bio. Buy that. That candle's really awesome. And yeah, we'll just be moving on into the interview. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. I feel so flattered.
Yeah, I'm so excited you're here because this is like what I really want to do with hacking astrology. Like, I really want to have a conversation with someone who has like a more experienced perspective as I do, but in a different type of way, a different type of context. So like, that's why I think these perspectives of these conversations are so important to talk about too, to bounce ideas off each other, be like, is that toxic? Is that
absolutely
healthy?
I mean, that's what astrology is all about. You know what I mean? It's like, at the end of the day, it's all of us kind of like trying to figure this shit out together. There's no specific like end all be all to it. At least that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this conversation is just generally about toxic astrology, and I really want to know your background. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
All right. Well, I guess like my stage name, my social media name is Piscesito. But my actual name is Vernell. I don't like calling myself an astrologer, actually. Like, I don't like going like on platforms and being like, I'm an astrologer. Like, I do this. Like, I'm so like the voice of reason. I don't like doing that. Like, I'm the person that really enjoys astrology and has like a hand for it and has studied it for like 7 years already. So it's been a while.
Yeah, and I've seen you say that on social media, and like, I think that's totally valid, obviously. But it reminds me of when I started my digital marketing agency, and basically the definition of professional or doing something professionally is getting paid for it. And I had to kind of claim my title as someone who like had a lot of intelligence and had skill in a certain area. I'm not saying like you don't believe in yourself, but I personally have dealt with situations like that where I felt like imposter syndrome. Like, am I worthy of this title? Am I like deserving of this title?
No, you're definitely onto something. Like, I don't think it's about believing in myself as much as it is in like, I don't want to contribute to this whole, because I feel like it's a thing right now that like everyone and their mother is like, I'm an astrologer. Like, what does it take to be an astrologer? Is it just, like, obviously, like, if you're getting paid for something and you have a skill in it, like you said, like, it makes sense that you would call yourself an astrologer. And I feel like if, like, of all people, I also have like the right in a way to call myself that, totally. But it's just like, it totally goes hand in hand with like the topic of the podcast, because I feel like a lot of people will just go out there and be like, yeah, well, I'm an astrologer. Like, I've been studying this for like 2 weeks and like I know exactly how to read like my chart, and they'll have like a table chart with like the placements, and like I'm reading that and I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like, obviously that's not what I'm doing, but yeah, I just have never really, I don't know, maybe it's me being an Aquarius everything, honestly, and just like not wanting to fit in like one little box and like doing this one thing. But yeah, I guess I'm also like, I'm an astrologer. My main platform is on TikTok and partly on Twitter as well. I try to make it like I try to make it really understandable while still keeping it like a little bit professional. Yeah, I would say it. Yeah, I would say that. I don't know if I would say professional, actually. I would probably say accurate instead of making it like so serious. I want to make it understandable. I want to make it digestible, and I want to make it like consumable in a way that doesn't seem overwhelming. Like, sometimes astrology, just like with all the terminology and all the seriousness behind it, can seem like this whole thing. And I want to kind of like communicate it in like a Gen Z friendly, modern friendly type way.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so interesting because I get I've been on TikTok for a year plus. And I guess a lot of people have been following me for a long time. And they're like, you taught me so much about astrology. You're like the only astrologer I follow. You're like the only astrologer that like has like helped me teach things. And I don't know, I think that's like so important. Like something that we can offer like to the audience, you know?
Right. Just like because it's like, it's been for such a long time, such a thing, like well, first of all, it was very simplified. And now when we get into like people getting into astrology, it's been for such a long time, such a like, oh yeah, I think it's cool, but it's like super difficult to understand. Like, every single person that tries to approach it is kind of like intimidated by it to a certain extent. So I think that's the power also of the platform which we are in. I've been on it for like a year plus. So I think we started around the same time.
Okay.
And I see that TikTok has a lot of downsides, definitely. But I think that's the power of like the platform which we are in, that we can make things really, really like palatable and digestible. And you have to have like the understanding to be able to do that. But yeah, that's like where I groove most of the time on TikTok. I'm trying to like do different things, but right now it's like my main thing.
So how did you gain all of your intelligence?
That's a really interesting question, because I get that a lot. I have never fully finished a book on astrology. Like, I have never read like from page to page, but like, it's almost like I started, well, let's start from the beginning, right? Let's start there. Like, I started getting interested in astrology early 2013, maybe late 2013, because I was heavy on Tumblr, and that was like the shit over there. It was like, I was on Tumblr too. Right. And it was like, suddenly everybody was talking about astrology. And like around the same time, I was like reading Percy Jackson. So it like made sense that like both things were coming up in my life. But I was just like, haha, I'm a Pisces. Like, that's so fun and cute. Yeah. And then I moved like from one continent to the next. I had like nothing to do all the time. I was super bored with my life, super confused. And I remember I found Alyssa Sharp on YouTube. God,
she was one of the first astrologers that I followed too.
I know. Yes. Oh, she's the OG. She's like such an OG. And actually, like little sidebar, like I think she followed me back like only like a couple of months ago. Yeah. And I was crying. Like, I was crying my eyes out. I like DM'd her right away. I was like, oh my God, like, you're the first person that ever like blah, blah, blah. And then, but anyway, like, she's super like pivotal in like my astrology journey, because she was like, I saw like her video about like a moon sign or whatever. And I was like, what the fuck is a moon sign? Like, what is that? And I just like Googled that. And then I went down the whole rabbit hole and found my entire chart. And then at first what I started doing, which is what I feel like most people start that way, it's like you just Google, you know what I mean? You just Google and Google and Google and you read and you read and you read and you find forums and you find, Chris Brennan was also one of the first people that I ever found, and you just like try to find like, okay, who's like a renowned figure in this space, and who are people listening to? So it's like Alyssa, it's this other astrologer, this other person doing like podcasts and whatever. I actually don't know. I think the astrology podcast came out way after that, but like there were already like names out there, and so like that's what I was reading. And then I started getting like gifts from people, just like astrology books. And I would read mostly about my own placements though. And then through that, I started talking to my friends and my family. It was very natural. It was like, I would never really, which is why I also kind of struggle sometimes with saying the word astrologer, to kind of like go back to that, because I never really like sat down and was like, I'm going to do my homework on astrology now. You know what I mean? It just like kind of happened. I started getting books.
You know what I think is that like, I feel like we all have something to bring to the community. And you know, if we hold ourselves back based on how many books we read or how many like other astrologers have defined astrology for us,
right?
You know, like how far are we gonna get?
No, it doesn't make it. You're right. I know. I need to believe in myself.
But honestly, you know, I think there is a lot of like great conversation around like gatekeeping and like I think right now on TikTok, there's a lot of conversations about, you know, closed practices and closed communities. And, you know, I feel like there is importance in maybe protecting cultural beliefs, but like when it comes to astrology, obviously there has to be a responsibility and like an ethical like management of it.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm still thinking about it as well. Like, what does that balance look like? You know,
that's a good question. That conversation is not on my For You page at all. Like that sounds like a way smarter For You page than mine. I'm just like getting like Will Smith slapping someone like over and over and over. And that's like everything that's happening on my end. But yeah, it happened. Like I said, like it happened super naturally and like super just, how do you say it? Like organically.
Yeah.
And like, it's not that I didn't read a book or I didn't listen to the right person. I did all of this like cherry picking of information from like different sources, you know what I mean? And then what I did, which is what I tell everyone to do, is to like take out a chart and observe people in your real life. Like observe them and like talk to them and like interview them. And I would be like, do you feel like this? Like I would almost like conduct like not experiments, but like research on like my family and friends. And I'd be like, do you think this is like, this happened to you? And like, maybe like when you were 15, like this thing and the other, it was just like an interview type thing. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I like carried on. And at some point, you know, I just felt very confident in my knowledge. After all, like it was literally 7 years of like doing this over and over and over again, that I started posting about it on social media in like a very haha way. Like finally I get to talk about it, but not like I'm trying to get a platform behind it or anything. And I wasn't even doing readings up till like, I think 2 years ago, because I really wanted to feel like very founded in my knowledge. But yeah, I'm getting like totally sidetracked.
Oh my God, I feel like I'm so different. I'm very like, let me just jump into it. Like,
what do you mean?
Like I just kind of like dive into like topics and I guess like areas of my life very like quickly and with lots of confidence, I guess. Like for example, like I have my digital marketing agency and you know, I don't know everything about marketing. And even now, like when I started, I didn't know much about marketing. And even now, I don't know that much. I'm not like a master at marketing. But I still have like something to sell. I still have something to bring, you know? I have a product. So
obviously, if not, you know, like people wouldn't be working with you if you didn't have something to offer. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, it's the same thing like for me. Like, it's so weird. I think it's legitimately like being Saturnian is a lot of that. It's a lot of that like impostor syndrome, like why are you even doing this? Like you don't even like I could be literally like winning the Olympics at like diving, let's say, and like I'd be standing there with like my medal and I'd be like, oh my God, like these people are all fooled. Like I don't even know how to swim, you know what I mean? When like obviously I know. Like I will get pages upon pages of like reviews on my readings. Like I have my platform, which I feel like does kind of speak for my skill because of how I got it, like which type of content ended up going viral for me, which by the way, I didn't even try to go viral on TikTok. That was kind of crazy. That just kind of happened. But like I'll get reviews on my readings like, this was the most validating experience of my life. You're amazing. Like, I can't believe you predicted this and this and that. And then I'll just sit there and be like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
great.
no,
Like,
I'm the same way. I read it like math, and then people are like, "Oh, this related to my life so much." I'm like, "Oh, I guess cool. I guess I'm just
yeah.
telling you what I see." But let me ask you a question. How has your understanding of astrology changed over time as you've, been in the community and practiced it?
I think this is a really interesting question because it's gotten less deterministic, definitely on my end. Like, I think when you find astrology, the question of, like fate or all these like really heavy things behind it, like, do you even have free will, whatever, doesn't really come up. You just like see this and you're like, oh, like things are written in the stars, like things are happening because the stars are moving this way. And so it's gotten way less deterministic. It's gotten more flexible. I've understood like what it represents in general, or like for me to, in my understanding. And it's just lost a lot of like pessimism and seriousness. Like I would see astrology and be like, oh my God, like I'm doomed. Like, which is like what you find a lot in TikTok with like younger people. It's like, so it's valid because like it's scary at first. You see it and it's like, why does this make sense? You know what I mean? And you just think it kind of like controls or like puppeteers your life.
Yeah, I think it's understandable that, people get into something like astrology, which is a symbol-based system, and then see it as very fixed, see it as very like deterministic, very permanent, because it kind of just assigns, titles to you.
Right, exactly.
So it makes sense, and I feel like we do have to also understand that process of how people get into astrology. How can we help that process? How can we improve that process of people getting into astrology and then having a certain like pessimistic view on it, And I think that we should understand, like what astrology naturally leads to, and then maybe how we can, reform it a little bit.
And that's totally our responsibility as creators as well, which is why it's great that you're doing this podcast, and like just calling certain things out and just like naming them and just like being like, hey, listen, like this is not that way. Like, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's so Aquarian.
It's very Aquarian, absolutely. It's just like, you guys, this is not the way. Like, I'm going to show you like how it's actually done.
Yeah. So do you think you can answer that question? Like, do you believe in free will or fate when it comes to astrology?
Yes, I've thought about this question so often throughout my life that I have to have an answer for it. Like, literally spent like sleepless nights. It's complicated, okay? This is how I see it. It's not complicated, but it's like I have to explain it. I think astrology is something that is still to this day, after all the research and all the books and whatever, something that's very abstract. And it basically displays energies that have to be fulfilled, or like things or like lessons, for example, that have to happen. So like on that end, there's a little bit of fate in there, but it's like, for example, I was telling my friend the other day, like, let's say like in this lifetime, I'm meant to learn about heartbreak. But if I choose to move to Germany, I will learn about heartbreak by dating a certain guy and him breaking my heart. But if I choose to stay in Panama and like, I don't know, like date women, I will learn about heartbreak maybe through losing my first baby or whatever. You know what I mean? And like, that's where the free will comes in. I think we are architects of our own lives. However, like certain lessons or certain feelings or certain moods, certain emotions that we're meant to experience are still going to happen. The question is just like through which channel, and that's what we can influence. So there's a little bit of both. I mean, there's determinism in the fact that, for example, like I said, maybe you're meant to experience heartbreak, you're meant to experience loss, whatever, in this lifetime. How you're going to experience it is what's up for debate. Like you can have a bunch of like terrible seventh house placements, but I cannot tell you if it's your cousin or your husband or your child that's your enemy. You know what I mean? Like, who is it gonna be at the end? You know what I mean? Like, that's the question.
Yeah.
So it's both.
Do you think that you can run away or hide from a transit?
No, I don't think so.
Like, let's say there's like like a Pluto transit, coming your way, and you just stay home.
No, I don't think so. Like, I think someone's going to text you then, you know what I mean? Or like something's going to happen. It always manifests in like the weirdest, smallest way. Even like, yeah, no, I don't think you can run away from that.
And you know what's interesting?
Do you think so?
Now that you say that, I was reviewing like the code of ethics in astrology, and they said that when you explain a transit to someone, you have to emphasize that a placement can represent in many different ways. There's not one way that a transit or a placement can come express as. So, maybe that's, support for free will in astrology. But I do know a lot of astrologers that believe in fate. They're like, this is the chart and this is like what happens. But
how is it for you? I don't know. Like, how do you feel about it? I'm like turning the tables, like asking you the questions now.
No, this is my podcast, so that's great. I'm a free will person. And I think that this is because of my spiritual beliefs. I grew up Catholic, so I already have like this concept of free will embedded in my head. But now that I'm more like spiritual and more like free and I don't assign to a certain religion or practice, I see how much power I have in the world. I know how much power I have to change the world and to change my circumstances. And I believe manifestation does exist, and there has to be some sort of free will when it comes to situations like that. We could say that life is just kind of like a movie that we kind of play out, it's like, sometimes I look at life, it's like stories of the old soul just being played out over and over again. Just like the same types of stories, just replaying, but in this magnificent way that we call like humanity.
It is true. I mean, we are playing in a way the same play over and over in just different settings and with different like characters and whatever. But the human experience, it's at its core, I think, honestly, like very honestly, just the pursuit of love. And then just like, it's that in just like every single different aspect. And people get affected by it and they just like end up going another direction. But at the end of the day, like, that's a really beautiful way to see it, actually. I had never thought about it like that, like a movie.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, I don't really look at my charts and transits that much personally. I know a lot of people look at them every day. I don't. I look at it when I have a special occasion, like I love electional astrology and just like, just like looking at like when is the best day to do something or like what the energies of the day can affect something.
I mean, I'm the same with my chart most of the time. Like I try to not engage too much with like what the energy is today and like what am I supposed to do and whatever, and like my own transits. And like some people know like years in advance, like that's gonna happen that day and that's what I'm gonna do and whatever. And like I try, because I had this whole entire like spiritual awakening moment with astrology just a little bit ago where I like almost like deleted all of my social media and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like
I saw that happening to you. I felt bad. That energetically through social media. It was
bad. The thing is, like, listen, like this whole entire Capricorn stellium was happening in my 12th house, and Venus was retrograde, obviously in Capricorn, ruling over my 9th house, right? So it was obvious that I was going to struggle somewhere like mentally and spiritually with astrology and my beliefs. And I was really just like standing there, and there's like a whole YouTube video filmed on this that I never posted, by the way. Like, it's like why I believe in astrology, but it's like a little bit, I don't think it's controversial, but I think it's like I could word it better. But I like struggled so much with my belief. And then one day, you know, things kind of fell into place, and I made this video, and I like sat down, and I was like, I understood kind of its place in my life. But I think also through like TikTok and a lot of things, it just became something that it wasn't supposed to be from the beginning. So I totally understand this. Like,
I think we had
treating
the
it more
same.
chill.
Yeah, I think we had the same kind of beginning on TikTok where it's like it just happened.
How did it happen for you? I'm so excited to know, actually.
Well, I think it all started when I offered free birth chart readings. I offered.
Whoa, okay.
I'll tell you how I got into it though. I texted a couple of my friends, and I was
Right.
like, "Hey, can I like use your chart? I'm gonna post some TikToks of me like doing mini readings, and I want to offer like free birth chart readings on my TikTok." And
Right.
they gave me it, and I started doing it, and then people started asking me for it. So and I just started a whole thing where I did like hundreds of readings.
Of free birth chart readings?
Well, some people paid to be put it to the top of the list and blah, 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 you know. There's that
Okay,
sort of
yeah,
thing, but-
sure. I mean, obviously, you should be paid regardless. That's insane.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I was doing paid. I've never in my life, like, I think I've done like one giveaway in my life. Yeah, when I reached like 100K. Other than that, I've never done a free birth chart reading. And honestly, like, kudos to you, because that shit, even if it's paid, even if you're like doing it, it's the most draining job ever, because you're tapping into somebody else's energy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you're
no,
literally,
it's very draining.
You're literally to do that for free. Like, I can't believe you did that. That's
I know.
insane. That's so crazy.
It got a hand, and then I eventually like did all the readings, and then you know set up
Oh
my
my
shop and etc. And
Yeah,
I wasn't doing
but
readings for a long time. Yeah.
When did you stop?
I stopped after those free birth chart readings. I feel like I just needed
You're like,
to.
I'm burnt out.
I was like, I had to take some time to like figure out like what are my readings going to look like, and like how do I do
Absolutely.
them, and how am I going to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when I see like a scary transit, when I see like Pluto or Saturn, I take time to observe. Like, I don't let that kind of worry me and make me super anxious. Like, I take a step back, and I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And I remind myself, like, I've been through so much, and I'm still on top. Like, I can handle anything at this point, you know? So throw a Saturn transit at me, a Pluto transit at me, like, I'm going to figure it out.
Throw
eventually.
whatever.
You know,
You're ready.
So like, but in terms of astrology, I look at it, I observe it, but I don't let it like define my perception. I let it like inform my perception.
Yeah, and it should.
Right?
Like, I think there's no way to like, I mean, I think it's always intimidating. There's no way to make it not intimidating. So like, the best way to like take it is being like, okay, with a clear head, like, this is just a chart. What could it mean? Like, how do I prepare myself for this? But just not, and that kind of goes hand in hand with this like whole free will conversation we're just having, where it's like, I have, and I'm going to have control over the situation. I personally don't. Like, I just look at the chart of like, for example, like my exact Saturn return, and I just push it to like the back of my head, and I just don't deal with that. I'm like, it's going to come at some point, like whatever, I'm going to just let it come. In my end, it's more of like, I see a transit, and I'm like, I know that's going to happen. For example, like, I have had Neptune on my sun for like almost 2 years at this point. Like, it's been a lot, like almost an exact conjunction for such a long time. Because it keeps going back to 20 degrees of Pisces, like literally all the time. And that's where my sun's at. And I knew it was coming before it happened. And now that it's happening, I kind of like to make light of it, but it's not something that I like genuinely, like, again, like, astrology had to find its place in my life, and it can't be present all the time everywhere, because if not, I've become resentful. And that's when this whole thing started happening to me, where I'm like, ugh, like, I don't even want to post videos. Like, I don't even want to do chart readings. Like, I don't even want to deal with this topic anymore. Like, I just want to disappear. You know what I mean? In the social media and like the astrology sphere. And so for me, it's more about like knowing that the transit's coming. If I feel like engaging with it, then I will. And I feel like just letting it happen, then I will do that as well. Just because like astrology can be very overwhelming. And it is to me, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about toxic astrology, like, can you define toxic astrology? Like, when does astrology get toxic?
I feel like the conversation around toxic astrology is very much like, to me in my mind, like the conversation around like inappropriate music or like inappropriate music videos, where it's like, it's all about who's consuming the content. It's all about like whose responsibility it is. And it's always this question, like, is it, you know, Miley Cyrus's responsibility to not get on the fucking wrecking ball? Or is it my responsibility to like, just not let my kid onto YouTube to watch that? You know what I mean? Like my 10-year-old kid. And so like, that's how I feel about toxic astrology, because there are a lot of things, for example, like there are a lot of generalizations and there are a lot of, like shticks, you know what I mean, that you will take and you will do them in your daily life. Like even as like a professional astrologer, you'll be like, obviously, like you're a Sagittarius, like, obviously you're a Pisces. And you laugh about it because you know the other person either, first of all, doesn't know anything about astrology and you're just like talking to them and they're not going to take it seriously. Or second of all, they might be someone that does know astrology and they'll understand that it's a joke. But once you like start taking these stereotypes, it's two things. It's stereotypes and it's determinism. Once you start taking these two to like make people fearful and try to like elicit a reaction from somebody else for your own gain, which is like all these like snappy, super like, oh, this is what's gonna happen, you have to be super careful, TikTok type videos. No, that's when it gets toxic, when it's like, I want you to feel fear and I want you to feel some type of like distraught so that you will engage with my video and it will go up. You know what I mean? That's toxic astrology to me. That's like, but again, like the conversation is a lot about who's consuming it. It's a lot about like, who are you allowing to consume that, and who are you catering your content to? Because sometimes creators will go out there and like very obviously cater to like kids and be like, you're gonna die tomorrow. And you're like, what? You know?
Oh my God. So I saw this TikTok recently where someone was pretty much assigning mental illnesses to signs. You know, okay.
That doesn't happen rarely, first of all. Like, that's a thing.
I know, it happens a lot, and I comment on it all the time. But they were saying, it wasn't even like aspects. It was just like, oh, Virgos. Oh no, they said if every sign no shade to the Virgos.
So funny.
They were like,
the shade to the Virgos. I'm just kidding.
They took the signs and said like, okay, if every sign was a mental illness, what would it be?
Like what? But again, like if you to like even think to make that type of content, like you have to be unaware of like the certain boundaries that you have to keep on social media. What I will say though, because I'm just like you, like I will literally like get in a fight every week over like toxic astrology content, or I used to like all the time. There's this tarot reader, I remember this like as it was yesterday. This tarot reader that pulled out. Do you know a little bit about tarot? Mm-hmm. Like a little bit. Well, you pull out like she pulled out like the Lovers, and she was like, "You're gonna die."
That's like, none of the sort, actually.
I stitched her and I like went off. It was like my second week like going viral on TikTok and everybody like got on my back. She's hated me ever since and like always comments on my videos. Whenever like something bad happens to me, she's like, you got what was coming for you because you came for my like the Lovers reading, whatever. Actually completely sidetracked right now. What was I talking about? But I'm just like you, like I comment on every single one of these like toxic astrology videos. And the point is like, I do want to say like, sometimes, because I've had this experience as well, where like I try to like correct someone, and then like I realize like, oh, this is like a person that didn't have a following, you know, like that wasn't trying to get a following, and that was just like doing like a funny video, you know, right? What I mean? Like doing like a video for like their 10 followers, and like on that end, that's a really interesting conversation. Like, do you carry any responsibility as someone with like 10 followers, like do non-toxic astrology, or can you just, I mean, when it comes to mental illness, that's a completely different conversation. Like nobody should be assigning mental illnesses to anything on TikTok, like point blank period. But like if it's like, let's say like a Sagittarius or like Pisces stereotype, and someone's like being a little bit jokey about it, and they're like, or even being a little bit like, oh yeah, like serious, like all Pisces are like this, and or oh my god, I keep wait. Cut that out.
You're good.
They keep being like, oh, Pisces is Pisces. Okay, wait, I can't say plural of Pisces.
I
Where's the
love your
plural of
Pisces Mercury.
It's so bad.
Wait, did you say your chart?
I didn't.
Say
Should
your
I say my chart?
Yeah. Oh, if you want.
No, totally. I'm a Pisces Mercury because we're talking about it all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a Pisces Sun, Taurus Moon, Aquarius Rising, Aquarius Venus, Aries Mars, Pisces Mercury retrograde. That's some fucked up stuff.
Love it.
But anyway, back to the conversation. Like, if you're like making a stereotype type video about Sagittarius, let's say, and you're being even a little bit serious about it, is it really your responsibility to not do that as someone with like 10 followers? I don't think so. Like, I think you can do whatever the fuck you want on your personal account. That like, if you're not trying to make it viral, and if this is not like with the intent of like teaching someone anything, and you're just like, your ex was horrible Gemini, then you can go rant on your TikTok about Geminis for all I care. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just think it gets...
It's the creators like us with a platform, and that are or people that are trying to get a platform that need to be responsible. You know what I mean? But I can't. I don't feel right going up to like a 100 follower page and being like, listen, you can't talk about it like this. Like, who am I to tell you that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to certain areas and certain topics, it's like, don't comment on that. Like, your take on astrology is probably not nuanced enough to like provide a good assessment of it. Like, for example, like I saw a person post like the signs who are most likely to get revenge. Like, I don't think that's bad. I don't think that's bad at all. Like, revenge is a human thing, you know?
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. And you can see it. I mean, you can see like spite in a natal chart, even in signs, like in the archetypes of signs. Like, you'll see who could be more spiteful and revengeful, and who could be less.
Right. So I'm gonna say some hated tropes that exist on social media, and then
all right,
I guess we'll just do
I'm gonna be under fire.
And...
I'm gonna be under fire because I definitely have contributed to toxic astrology,
and I'll say, like, I have too. And even I like post late on my Instagram for my TikTok. Like, I post like 3 months late because I just make so many TikToks. And I go through all my past content. I'm like, oh, that's kind of sketchy. Like,
all of my beginning videos are gone. Like, I think if you go to my page, like, right to the back, like right to the bottom, it's like the first video that went viral, and then there's like a month gap with like nothing, just because I privated everything. Because I was like, nope, like, I can't be doing that.
Yeah, but I mean,
I still contribute to it sometimes.
I think it's all about reforming ourselves, and, you know, like,
yeah, absolutely.
We live in this matrix, or create in this matrix, you know. So
right,
I think
and you evolve with your content,
regardless.
You evolve with your content, you grow, you know. But absolutely. I am the one person that will trash. But this is like my shtick with my followers. Okay, like, this is me making a joke and making it very obvious that it's a joke.
I know.
With Sagittarius moons, I go in all the time. Because, like, I tell people, like, I did it one, you know what I mean? And it was like a horrible experience. And, like, always, like, my captions and my comments are like, you guys don't take this seriously. Like, it's a joke. And at this point, like, I have this whole like banter with Sagittarius moons they're like, oh, I thought you hated me. And I'm like, obviously I don't hate you. Yeah. Like, ha ha ha.
I have the same thing with Virgos.
Do you do that with Virgos? No way.
I used to. I don't really hate them.
Well, I think I don't do it as actively anymore, just because, like, but I do think, like, it's come to the point where I've made it like so often and like in a joking manner, which again, I think is a thing. Toxic astrology being a lot about who you're talking to and the type of delivery, and like, are you joking? Are you trying to teach me something? And where is the line between that? But I've done it so often that people like remember. They're like, aha, my dude. You know what I mean? And like, I made this video just like a while ago about like which placements I would or wouldn't date. Exactly. And I didn't which placements I wouldn't date. And I didn't include, just like off of compatibility, you know what I mean? And I didn't include Sagittarius moons. And they were like in the comments like, oh, I guess you would date us. Like, oh my God. And I'm like, dude, like, that's so funny, you know? It's just like a silly
thing. But it's like,
moons.
realistically, if you came across Sagittarius moon, and maybe I'm asking you this honestly, like, realistically, if you came across a Sagittarius moon, or a person with a Sagittarius moon who, you really liked, you'd probably date them, right?
Absolutely. I don't let astrology dictate my life in any way, shape, or form. And that, I think that's how it should be. You know what I mean? Like, further from today is Saturn day and today is Mercury day and whatever, and what's better to, like, further from that, I don't really let it get into my relationships, or like any judgments or any prejudice. Is that how you call it? I don't know.
Prejudice. Yeah.
Prejudice. Yeah, that. I don't let it like trickle into my relationships, and I don't think you should. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so back to the tropes. I'm just gonna list them, and you tell me, I guess, what you think about this trope. So the first one is the Pisces men hate, which you might have referenced already. But what do you think about that? And people posting about that, and not just you.
Like obviously very personally, I like being a Pisces man. I find it entertaining and I find it funny. Like, the thing is, tropes and like hated tropes, and that's the thing. Like, stereotypes come from somewhere, right? Always. Like, they didn't just come up with them. You know what I mean?
Right,
Obviously, not all Pisces men are bad. But it's like, I just find it hilarious. Like, when it comes up, honestly.
I mean, yeah. Compare Pisces to like a Capricorn. Like, I mean, you know, like according to the zodiac, like they're going to go about love in a different way. You know?
Exactly. So, like Jupiter, you know what I mean? Like Jupiter just grows and grows and grows and gets and gets and gets and doesn't really think about the consequences in that way, like a Capricorn would do, for example. And so, like, again, like these hated tropes, or like these stereotypes do come from somewhere. It's about, are you communicating this in a way of like, haha, this is like a hated trope, because there's this whole background to it that's like actual information that doesn't, like, as long as you're not trying to put everybody in a box, I'm good. Like, as long as you're joking, me as a Pisces man, I love being called toxic or whatever. I just think it's funny. You know what I mean? I just think it's hilarious.
All right. And have you seen any posts about Neptune representing drugs?
Yes. And again, that probably goes back to Pisces and Jupiter and no control and whatever. And I think that's horrible, like horrendous. Like, once you start getting onto like serious topics, like very obviously serious topics, this shouldn't be around social media being paraded as even a joke. Like, you don't do addiction jokes.
Yeah, like Taurus, so, like, and eating disorders.
Exactly, for example, or like and there are certain placements that I have observed have certain tendencies, choose certain things in combinations with other things. But I would never go on social media and talk about that to a public, to like an audience of thousands and thousands of teenagers, like impressionable teenagers, and we'll take that and be like, oh, that means that, and that's why my life is this way. You know what I mean? Like, I would never go public. There are certain observations that just need to stay with you, and I think that's a question of tact. You know what I mean? It's a question of also like tone and knowing when to communicate what. And there are certain things that just don't need to make it social media. Also, Neptune and drugs. I mean, I see where you're coming from. I just don't think it has a place in social media at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's like, why are we talking about this right now? Like,
exactly. And like,
you make it triggering.
Exactly. And you make it, the thing is, like, these posts are also always so like deterministic. Like, if you have Neptune exactly, like, for example, like they'll be like, you have Neptune in this sign, you're gonna have this, and like, dude, Neptune's been in the one sign for like how long? It's in like the cycle like 15 years or something. Like, come on.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Are there any other hated tropes that you have seen?
I mean, every single sign gets their own kind of rep and their own kind of little trope. Libra moons and being queer.
Sagittarius placements. I have a gender and sexuality episode coming up, which we're going to talk about that. Which makes sense.
You should.
Like mythologically.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like if you're talking about these things in the right tone, and you're not trying to like profit off of the fear of other people or off of the insecurities of other people, then completely like do your thing. But I think it gets toxic when it gets to that point, you know?
My question is, what do you think about rising signs being an explanation for our physicality in regards to certain signs being beautiful, like Libra
Mm-hmm.
and Taurus, who are ruled by
Mm-hmm.
Venus,
Mm-hmm.
and them like kind of describing like physical descriptions that are not inclusive of people that are not
Mm-hmm.
like of Western ideals?
I mean, that's actually a really good question. First of all, I think there's a lot to it. Like, things in your first house will find a way to manifest. That's how I see it. Like, obviously, genetics trumps everything, because, like, I can't, like, I can't look like a white man. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, because, like, it's not in my genetics. But I think, like, planets will find a way to express themselves through your first house. So, like, even if it can definitely be physical. Like I think it is a thing and it happens. And I think there's nothing. I don't see it as inherently wrong or as inherently toxic to say, for example, that like Taurus and Libra are in a way charming or beautiful. You know what I mean? As a rising sign. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not critical of that.
I think we can say Taurus and Libra are charming, but
right.
I think like my issue is like, okay, you're saying they're beautiful as well, but beautiful in what way? Like, beautiful physically?
That's the thing. Like, it can be
because of
beautiful in so
Venus?
many different ways, which is why I think it's also not a bad thing. Like, I think you can say like they're beautiful, and beautiful can look completely different depending on everything and every single other aspect that comes into your life, like genetics and culture and whatever. And maybe beautiful dresses a certain way somewhere, and
True.
That's how your rising sign expresses there. And then beautiful dresses, but I don't think it's inherently like a bad thing. Like that knowing how to charm with your looks and with your allure, with your like personality, and like when it comes to like also like certain transits to the first house, again, I think they will find a way to express themselves, which is why my readings and the type of astrology that I practice is often like I try to leave a door open for a lot of like personal interpretation. Like, sure, Jupiter in your first house can make you a little bit thicker, but Jupiter in your first house can also represent that you're just in a happy mood, you know what I mean? And you're super optimistic, and people, or like maybe you're going to start preaching something, but I think planets will always find a way to be represented through the first house in a very noticeable way, if not visual. And then at least in the content that I've seen and what I've kind of engaged with, when you go into like physical descriptions of what a Libra rising or a Taurus rising has to look like, that is a problem, obviously, because you're probably going off of Western ideals. That is a problem. But if you're saying they're beautiful, I'll give you that, because beautiful can be everything.
I remember someone commented, which I guess they had like a similar argument to you, but yours is obviously more developed, where they were saying that, yeah, but Sean, it's an energy thing. It's an energy thing. Like, if you know, you get it. And I was like,
if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't.
And I was like, I disagree, because our concept of beauty develops in this heteronormative like society that we live in. The fact that we like our idea of beauty is based on Western ideals. So it's like, can we ever escape like Western ideals when talking about beauty? But I think what you said makes sense. Like in your culture, like, a certain dress might be, super beautiful, and Venus is about aesthetics. Venus is about, fashion. So, I think that makes sense. Though I think we don't have to eliminate it, totally, but there's a responsibility. It might become a tricky topic, just like talking about eating disorders and etc.
Absolutely. I just think that you can kind of turn it around, like going back to like, yes, our concept of beauty, and it's true, is very defined by this like heteronormative, cisgendered, whatever type world we live in. But let's say like there's this person that doesn't fit any of the criteria or whatever, with like the most beautiful and charming placements in the first, like a Taurus rising with Venus in the first house, conjunct like Jupiter or whatever, like something crazy. That's like obvious that they're super charming and super beautiful. I think astrology can also become a channel to like let them know and like build their confidence and be like, no, like you might think that you're not beautiful because of what society has made of the word beautiful and has made it into this like Western thing. But you are like, look at this, you know what I mean? Like, look at your chart. It's even in like there, like it's represented in a way through the planets. So you can use it also like as a almost like as a self-esteem. For example, as a person also with like Venus in the first house and in Aquarius, I absolutely think like understanding my chart and understanding that placement really helped me like appreciate myself and like my features and how I looked different from everybody around me. Like I had a lot of like I don't belong type of problems growing up, and like with Chiron in the 11th house and whatever. And then like understanding that one placement, I felt very empowered. You know what I mean? So I do think we can take it and make it positive.
Yeah. I think that that's pretty interesting. And that makes me think about how we can look at our own chart and observe how our relationship with beauty and how we experience beauty in our life. Like we can look at Venus and we can look at the moon. And so I haven't thought about this before, but like, let's try to do a quick analysis on myself. So I have Capricorn Venus and I have a Taurus moon. So I think that would describe, obviously with the Taurus moon, kind of like an innate like connection with like Venusian ideals and beauty. But it's interesting because then I have my Venus in Capricorn, which is more, I think it's more about picking, like being wise about your beauty. And it's like, it's a type of energy where it doesn't do a lot often, but when it does do the work, it does it really well.
And it's very noticeable when it does something.
Yeah, but I think like in terms of beauty, and those are both earth signs, you know? So I think it would describe someone who's pretty confident in their beauty. What do you think? Are there any like bad things with Capricorn Venus?
I think the problem with Capricorn Venus, just as with like any Saturnian Venus placement, is the perception of beauty that you are born with, and that you are, or not born with, or that you're given, like the circumstances that you're kind of bestowed with are very like at first limited and pessimistic. It's Saturnian, so it's like very like, oh, like it's almost like like the ugly duckling story where like you don't realize your power until like you've grown into it. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with like your charm. It's the same thing with like your beauty. It's like, oh wait, like there's something really good and worthy behind this, but you like grow into it first. So that I would think that's kind of like the Saturnian experience with having a Saturnian Venus. It's like just growing into your beauty and into your power. That's and having that limit kind of from the beginning.
I think that makes sense because I think I definitely felt ugly my whole life. And
it's a thing.
I think nowadays
I'm the same.
Yeah. Like nowadays, I definitely see myself as more beautiful.
You grow into. I mean, Saturn doesn't make it like Saturn is. I really resonate with like comparing. I usually use like analogies to like make sense of like astrology stuff, and I really do find that whole story of like the ugly duckling that grows up just around ducks that are different. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, like I'm so ugly. Like I don't look like these people. And like, Jesus, this is so awkward. And then they grow up and they're like, oh, damn. Like I don't want to look like them at all. Like I'm so cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the Saturnian experience.
You find your own beauty.
Exactly.
I think that makes sense. No, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to talk about that because that is racism, you know, it does contribute to racism, you know, like rising signs in beauty and Western
it can be
ideals.
used for that.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, and people do post content on TikTok like that is basically racist. And
absolutely.
that's an issue. That's a serious issue, when it comes to using astrology. So that's when stuff gets really tricky.
But astrology, like if when we're talking about it, it's like a tool. You know what I mean? It's like a knife. Are you gonna use it to chop up dinner for your family, or are you gonna kill your neighbor with it? You know what I mean? It's a tool.
Yeah.
People misuse it. People misuse that tool. You know what I mean? I don't think it's the rising signs. It's the rising signs' fault, if you know what I mean, or like the concept of beauty in itself. It's the person.
Yeah. All right. And one last question that I'm wondering is, do you think that astrology is capitalistic at times?
I don't think that astrology is inherently capitalistic, but I think our capitalistic mindset can definitely influence astrology. And I've seen a lot of your content lately talking about the 10th house and legacy, and how we've been like trimmed by kind of this modern view on astrology to think it's like your career and it's all you're going to do and whatever. So definitely it can become capitalistic within a capitalistic context. And I do think, for example, a lot of the times the legacy that you leave behind does have something to do with your career, because we are trimmed as people through our capitalistic society to see our career as the channel to leave a legacy behind. You know what I mean? So it's almost like this thing that like changes shapes and forms depending on which context it's been used in. So it can be capitalistic, definitely, but it is not inherently. It's so abstract that it fits everything. Like if you lived in a completely socialist society, if you lived in a completely communist society, it would fit there as well. You would find ways to make it kind of morph to fit that type of society.
Yeah. So my mutual DM me and asked me about it actually. Like, what do you mean when you say that, Sean? Like 10th house isn't your career, it's your legacy. And I said, and I'll just read it verbatim. There's a capitalistic perspective that people have when they look at charts. It is true the 10th house is career, because that is our public experience, and career usually has a very public experience associated with authority and how we express our authority. But should that be our primary analysis of it? Should we be looking at the 10th house primarily as career, or should we be looking at it as something else? Are we reducing people's historical imprint to their career? Don't we have historical imprints outside of career? I would argue those are more important than what career can give us, because I'm all about self-development and self-actualization.
No, that's great. That's an amazing answer.
I said for some people their legacy is their career. For some, their legacy is outside of their career. So why are we minimizing people's historical imprint to career, and not kind of how they work with the public, how they kind of set rules and just kind of like work as a certain leader in a certain field?
Yeah, I think going off of career is extremely reductive. Like you're saying, with your statement, it's just reductive. Like career can fall in your 10th house, okay, but like your 10th house is so many other things at the same time. And I think that legacy focus is exactly what we need. Like we need that shift. We need to kind of like change the way that we view it, because it is also leaving some people out of the conversation. What if you never have a career?
Yeah.
Like what if you never wish to work, or you never have to work for some reason? What
if you're barely surviving?
Exactly. What if you're barely surviving
and you don't have time to think about no career?
Exactly. Like it completely leaves out all of these other experiences that are not this extremely like classical, like Hollywood movie type life that we've kind of made up to think. We've been made up to think that is how everybody's supposed to be living.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have an episode on capitalism and like the 10th house. Yeah, that'll be a good one. I wanted to read this comment that I got in response to this whole idea. Someone said, May I add this also because the Cancer Capricorn axis represents the lineage slash legacy line. Fourth house is lineage and 10th house is legacy. Fourth house is our heritage and our roots, where we come from, our
Mhm.
connection to the source or mother, and also the connection to our deeper, more hidden self. 10th house is what we create and leave in this world, something that stands the test of time and limitations of reality. Saturn's realm, it outlives your own self, something that you leave for next generations. And then the fourth house representing something we already embody, and the 10th house
Exactly.
representing something that we aspire to become in the future. And that's when we look into our charts. For example, our fourth house is the family we grew up in, and the 10th house is the family we create with our partner, which I think is
Mm.
it's pretty interesting take.
And it's great. That's a comment on a post. That's crazy. These people
That
should
was
have their
a
own
reply
platform.
to a story. I'm like, y'all need to post content.
Exactly. Like there is such like brilliant ideas out there. That
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's really true.
Yeah, so I just think that this capitalistic mindset on astrology can be quite detrimental, and I'm going to talk about it in terms of like the second house, the eighth house, the sixth house, even, and workplace, and
Yeah.
in
It
the
is
other
detrimental.
episode.
And
So I
like you
just
said,
yeah
it excludes people. You know what I mean? It
yeah
excludes so many experiences.
yeah it's very like it reminds me of like when I saw this post recently on TikTok where this disabled person was basically saying that they always feel left out. They always feel like left out of the combo and are not acknowledged. Um, and I think there are people like that with astrology. They're like, this doesn't
Yeah.
resonate with me at all because I'm just working. Like I gotta survive. Like I gotta provide for
No,
my
really.
family. Like I don't have time for all this. So it's like very, it's class. It might be classist socially, not inherently.
I think it's unintentionally classist. You know what I mean? And because I think the way in which we look at astrology sometimes is so reductive because we try to make it something so concrete. Like we try to make it one thing, and we leave out the the whole abstract side of it, and we try to make it something so understandable and digestible. And that's why people go like down the slippery slope of calling, oh yeah, the 10th is like your career, and not going further from that. And I think that kind of differentiates like good astrology from like productive bad astrology. It's like, okay, do you go further though? Like, do you understand the implication of the 10th house within the whole concept of natal chart? You know what I mean? And how it means and can mean so many other things that are not like your career, and that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that was a really great conversation.
I
I
loved it.
really enjoyed that. I think it taught me a lot and was definitely very enlightening. And I think it'll be super enlightening for the people listening, especially just to get like both of our takes as like experienced astrology people. I
Astrologers,
know
no,
you don't. I know you
you've
don't say
convinced
astrologer,
me.
so I avoid it. Um, but I think that's super important. Like our experience, telling people how we deal with it, and um, kind of showing our different perspectives and what is kind of like the best choice here. But
No, it was
thank
super
you. Yeah,
enriching. Thank
yeah,
you too for having me and for asking for my opinion and like platforming me in this way. It really means a lot.
yeah. You were on my list like from the start. So
Thank you so
because
much.
you're one of my faves, definitely one of my faves.
Same. I don't have many faves, like at all. I have like three faves. I mean it. Like
Yeah. All my favorite astrologers are just going to be on the podcast. Everyone will see.
it's gonna be amazing. So
Yeah. All
excited.
right. Well, thank you so much. And do you want to plug your socials or any projects that you're working on?
Piscesito across social media. Twitter is Piscesitos with an S at the end, so Pisces and an ITO. And actually, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm coming out with like an astrology guide. It kind of makes sense in the context of what we're talking about. It's like how to look at astrology the way that I look at it, like how to read your chart through a more abstract lens. That's coming this month, so keep your eyes out for that. And yeah, super excited to have been here. Thank you so much, and for for giving me the chance to speak with you on this super cool topic.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important. All right. Well, have a great night,
Thank
and
you.
we'll talk later.
You too.
Bye, guys. So I hope that interview was quite enlightening. I loved having that conversation. I feel like we talked about a lot of important stuff and, gave our advice on it. And I love Vernell. I love Piscesito. He's very smart, very intelligent, and he's very real, very genuine. And I just really appreciated that conversation because it taught me stuff. And I think it could definitely teach a lot of you stuff. So don't forget to rate, review, and share the podcast, and follow me on socials if you're not, at Water Aquarius on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Visit hackingastrology.com to stay updated with the podcast. Next week, we will dig into the astrology of love, gender, sexuality, and just talk more about that. And what's existing out there and how I deal with it. So next week will be a solo episode, and then after that we will have a guest. So yeah, see you next week.